J.R Brown is going to be talking to us about cultivating the spirit of brotherhood. So let's give Brother Brown our undivided attention.
I'm very pleased this evening to be with you brothers and sisters in the tract congregation again. Pleasure to look out and see the old faces known to us, and then to see the new faces that you've added during the interval that we've had the opportunity to be with you. So we're happy this week that you were chosen to be the host congregation for the Circuit Assembly, and that means that it gives us the opportunity to visit with you this evening and all week long up until our Circuit Assembly. So this evening is a very appropriate time for us to come together with our Bibles and discuss something very important to each one of us present, and that is our brothers and sisters. And our topic, cultivating the spirit of brotherhood, is important because as God's people, we do have that spirit of brotherhood. And our discussion of it is not to say that we do not have it, because when you look among Jehovah's people today, everywhere you find them, you have a genuine spirit of brotherhood, true brothers and sisters. But now the reason we want to give it consideration is because we know that it will only be as strong as each individual contributes to that spirit. And so the more we can do inside of ourselves to nurture, foster, and encourage that spirit of brotherhood, then the stronger it will be organizationally, and the closer we will feel to our brothers and sisters. So then it is important that we give consideration to the matter of how strong that spirit of brotherhood is in you as an individual. Now the fact that we have the spirit of brotherhood is no accident. In fact, it was prophetic. And one example that helps us to see it was God's purpose that we would have this spirit of brotherhood is found in the book of Isaiah, chapter 60. And we'd like to invite each one to open to that place. And we'll read the verse which poses a question. And then we'll discuss the question with you to see if we can get the answer, how this affects all of us. So when you open to Isaiah 60, don't close it right away, because you might have an opportunity to comment on something that is stated there. Now the question we want to consider is in verse number 8, Isaiah chapter 60, verse 8. And it says, "Who are these that come flying just like a cloud, and like doves to their birdhouse holes?" Then you notice the question mark. Well now, whenever a question is asked, it really needs to be answered, doesn't it? So maybe we could get an answer for that question proposed there in verse 8. Who are these that come flying? It says just like a cloud, and then like doves to their birdhouse holes, question mark. And that would be the question we need to get an answer for. I would like to respond to that. Who are those that come flying just like a cloud and like doves to their birdhouse holes? And we repeated it several times to give you time to think it out, because you probably had no idea you'd be asked that question this evening. All right, now who would like to then answer that and tell us who? All right, I'm going to start right here. Yes, sister, tell us who. Very good answer. Now, I'm just going to ask that the next comment, see, she said something that many of you were thinking, but we appreciate your courage to raise your hand and tell us. Now, just to narrow it down a little, see, she said it is Jehovah's people, Jehovah's Witnesses, and she's exactly right. Now, if you had to narrow it down a little bit more than that, you would pick out a certain group of God's people, and who would you say that was? All right. Yes, who would you say that was?
United Remnant.
Now, who would take another try at that? Yes.
Great crowd.
All right. So we have to go with this, the great crowd. You'll see why in a moment. So let's say the answer to the question, who are these that come flying like a cloud and like doves to their birdhouse hole? Here we are, a great crowd of God's people. Now here's how we conclude that. Now notice in the verse there it said that they would come like a dove. Well, now that's talking about you, our brothers and sisters, like a dove. Now, you've read in the Bible many times about this bird, the dove, and you know that the Bible uses him as a symbol of certain qualities. See, which tells us something, that when we come to God's organization and join our myriads of brothers and sisters, as we were singing about, we have to come like a dove, manifesting those qualities in God's arrangement. Now, from your study of the Bible, let's one at a time now name the qualities of a dove that we are to take on as God's people when we come to this great organization of His, or this birdhouse, so to speak. There. All right, what are the qualities associated with a dove? One at a time. You've read them in the Bible. All right, quite a few want to answer for this. Let's start in the back. Yes.
Love.
One more time.
Love.
Love. Now I'm just going to hold it before you give me a few others so we can round it out, especially for those that might be noting it. We call that, as the aid book said, lovableness. Here's why. Because you take a dove, there he is, you put him in your hand, you could cuddle him. There's something that is lovable about him. Now this tells us then, when we come to God's organization and join this brotherhood that is around the earth, then we're to take on that quality of being lovable by God and by the others around us. All right, very good. We've got one quality there. All right, Brother I.G., give us another one. All right, clean is very good. Though I'm going after another word, two other possibilities that mean just about the same thing. Mr. Gomez.
Peaceable.
Hold that one. Put that on hold. I want one that's right in harmony with clean, because you'll keep naming the same thing. Yes, go ahead. Yeah, but I must hold now. Let's get into this one mentioned, clean, a little bit more there. Yes, Jackson?
Pure.
Pure, all right. And you might as well give the other one, clean, pure, or begins with I. Yeah. Begins with, that's a good one, though. Yeah. Is it done? All right, innocent. There we have it. Yeah. So, brothers, this tells us something in the way of another quality. That when we come here, we're to take on the quality of being, the qualities of being innocent, of being pure, just like a white dove, being innocent, that is cleaned up from the world around us, and take on that chasteness that was included too. Now we put one on hold. Let's go back. Who gave us that one? Who we had on hold? All right, Sister Gomez.
Peaceable.
Yes, you do read about the peaceableness of a dove. Now think about that. We make the flight here. There are others. We're not by ourselves. So it means we've got to learn to live with all these others as brothers and sisters, getting along, peaceful with one another here. All right, good. What's another quality there? You could get a couple more that the Bible associates the dove with. When you run out, I'll give you the few others that I have here. All right, if you don't have any other one, I'll go with mine then. Yes, go ahead.
Harmless.
But I'll just put that right in with the ones that we had already. Well, brothers, what about beauty? You see there that dove is such a beautiful animal. Well, you say, what kind of beauty is this? Well, the same thing that the Watchtower's counsel is about in the spiritual paradise. Everyone that comes must attain to true spiritual beauty. And just like a dove, he takes that on. And then, of course, another is loyalty. Doves are very loyal. They tenaciously stick or adhere to something, and we do to God and our brothers and sisters. See, many of them can be trained to go from here to there and even carry a message, and that's what they'll do. No one can swerve them from that. So we all take on this quality of loyalty to God, yes, but to our brothers and sisters that are in this brotherhood. So certainly then, the fact that it says, here they come flying just like a dove, or like doves, lets us know when we come here and become a part of this brotherhood, we must take on those qualities. But now you learn something else in this verse too, because it showed their destination was to a birdhouse. Now let me ask you something. What kind of dove is it that goes in a house? Is that the same one that flies out in the woods, all wild, buzzing around here and there, wherever he wants to go? If that dove is going into a house, What do you know about him, Brother Cadaro?
Trained.
There it is. He has become domesticated. He has become trained. See, there's a lot of difference in a trained, domesticated dove and the kind that just flies around wild out in the woods. See, that's the way we all were out in the world before Jehovah helped us to make the flight here. We had a wildness about us. Instead of having those qualities that we named as purity, innocent, chasteness, peaceableness, loyalty, lovableness, see, we had wild, even beastly-like qualities as the world. And instead of training ourselves to come within the framework of what God was doing at his house, birdhouse as it is, we were out in the world buzzing around, flying here and there, doing whatever we wanted to do, manifesting whatever qualities we wanted to have. But now that we have entered that birdhouse hole, now we're someone that has become domesticated according to God's standard. We're someone that he has taught qualities to, someone who knows how to manifest these and thus get along and manifest this spirit of brotherhood. Now someone might say at this point, I don't know, maybe you thought of it, they might say, very fine, but how do we know this applies right now? Here we are in 1977. Isaiah wrote this better than 2,500 years ago. Why are we saying right now this is happening? Well, it's because of what it said there, right in front of the fact that they come like doves. It also showed that they would come to this birdhouse in what other symbolic sense? Someone can pick that out right out of the verse. See, no need to close it or go to another one until we understand this one well. So now what other symbolism was used there, right in front of doves, to show how they would come to this birdhouse, God's organization, this arrangement of Christian brotherhood? Yes, right here, sister. Like a cloud. Now think about this, brothers. That's the way God's people are coming into his organization now. They're coming like a cloud. Not just in dribbles, a few here and there, but they're coming in a lot at one time. Now to illustrate, let's say you're standing on the ground, and you look up in the sky, and you see a whole flock of doves going by. Well, now all you can see from the ground as you look up is this under part of their wing, which is white. But now since there are so many in that flock flying by all at once, in your mind you say, that looks just like a blank over here. Let's get a young hand to fill the blank in. You got
Cloud.
it. Just like a cloud. See, well, that's the way God's people are coming in now, brothers. Not in dribbles. All right, we'll take what we know to be fact. In the last 5 years, to God's great birdhouse arrangement, you've had over 1,146,000 get baptized in 5 years in God's arrangement. Well, now you see, they're not coming in a dribble here, a dribble there. No, they're coming in now en masse like a cloud. That's why we know what we're talking about here is taking place right now in God's arrangement there. So we can answer that question. Who are these that come like a cloud and like doves to their birdhouse holes? All around you, they sit, myriads of brothers and sisters, coming with that spirit of brotherhood. No, it did not happen by accident. It happened according to God's purpose, according to design. Just as verse 22 in that same book says, in Isaiah, it says, the little one himself will become 1,000, and the small one a mighty nation. I myself, Jehovah, shall speed it up in its own time. And this is what we see right now, a mighty nation of God's people. And this mighty nation, our Christian organization of brothers and sisters, exists because Jehovah God chose to speed the work up and to help many make the flight from this wild-like wicked system and come to his birdhouse organization and become domesticated and become true brothers and sisters. So no doubt about it, brothers, no doubt about it whatsoever, we have a brotherhood, we have a mighty nation. We are all here because God directed us here, helped us to make the flight, and enabled us to show growth and increase. Well now, brothers, then having this clear in mind, that what's happening among us was by design, according to God's purpose, And in harmony with the scriptures, we have this spirit of brotherhood. We want to examine for a moment what's the basis of our brotherhood. In other words, on what basis then can we call ourselves brothers and sisters? Well, now, Jesus answered that in Matthew chapter 23 because he wanted us to see that this was something real. It wasn't something just made up or imaginary, but that in fact we really would be brothers and sisters. Now let's see what the basis of this actually is. Matthew 23, if you turn there. And it comes out in a conversation, strangely enough, that he had with some Pharisees. But starting there at verse number 8, let's see the basis now, why we can call ourselves brothers and sisters. Matthew 23:8, he says, "But you, do not you be called rabbi, for one is your teacher, whereas all you are brothers. Moreover, do not call anyone your father on earth, for one is your Father, the heavenly one. Neither be called leaders, for your leader is one, the Christ." Now, I think we've discovered it right there. Verse 8, he said, first of all you are brothers. Then he told us why all of us that made the flight here would have to be brothers. And in verse 9, it was based on the fact, what would we all have in common? According to verse 9. Who sees that? All right, yes.
One Father.
One Father. And then in verse 10, there is the other part of the basis. We all have in common, yes. One leader. Who is that, sister? Right. Now, brothers, that is what makes brothers and sisters. You see, in other words, if a person has the same father, then they are related. And so we all come under the fatherhood of Jehovah God and also the leadership of Jesus Christ. Now, the fatherhood of Jehovah God is understood pretty well. We're not going to dwell on that too much. It's well understood. Jehovah's the Father. And that makes us brothers and sisters. But let's speak a little bit about this one leader, Christ, who is the head of the congregation, because if one doesn't understand this well, he could find himself having a little difficulty right in the congregation relating properly to others who are his brothers and sisters. And here's the mistake that is made by some when it comes to Christ as our leader and head. They sort of put Christ in two roles that do not bring him close enough to them. For example, some, even with knowledge of the truth in the congregation, would primarily think of Christ and what he did 1900 years ago when he sacrificed his life as our ransomer. Or they might think, well, he's going to reign 1,000 years and be the king over that new order. So during the millennial reign, he is going to, of course, be leader there. Now, in putting Christ's position solely in those two categories, you know what they overlook? They overlook his role right now, today, in the congregation. And if we miss that, then we miss a very important element that will draw us closer to our brothers and sisters that have come here. Now, when we go over to Ephesians chapter 4, we get a little more explanation as to what this additional element is that will draw us closer to our brothers and sisters under the headship and leadership of Christ. Now let's discover what that is in Ephesians now, the 4th chapter. And you'll have to carefully now follow the reading in verses 15 and 16 to discover his role now and what we need to do about it to draw closer and in harmony with our brothers and sisters. Ephesians 4:15 says, "But speaking the truth, let us by love grow up in all things into him who is the head, Christ. From him, all the body, by being harmoniously joined together and being made to cooperate through every joint that gives what is needed, according to the functioning of each respective member in due measure, makes for the growth of the body, for the building up of itself in love." Now, according to verse number 15 there, everyone that recognized the headship of Christ would be obliged to do what? If he wanted to be in harmony with all his brothers and sisters, what would he have to do then in order to harmonize with all of the others? All right, that's in verse 15 to put you directly on the answer. All right, Brother Cadero. He'd speak the truth, but what would it be that this would have to result in? Still in that same verse, it says so many points, Brother Johnson. All right, what would it have to do with love? Yes.
It says to grow in love.
All right, and grow up into, how did it put that there? See, we shouldn't miss that point. Yes, brother? Yeah. And then it said, into him, that is Christ, who is the head. Now there's the key, brothers. We've got to grow up into the love that Christ has. Now, if we do not, then it's impossible to take place what verse 16 mentioned, because see, it said, from him, that is Christ, all the bodies, by being harmoniously joined together. So in other words, if all of the brothers and sisters grow up into the type of love that Christ had, thus recognizing his headship in the congregation, then this will result in them being harmoniously joined with all the others. Well, now let's take the opposite of that. If some here or there fails to grow up into the love that Christ had and manifest that in the brotherhood, then they will not be harmoniously joined to all the others. That's why, brothers, when friction comes in the congregation, by that I mean personal things. Personal things when, say, for example, maybe this sister isn't getting along well with this one, or this brother isn't getting along well with this one, or this ministerial servant isn't getting along so well with this elder, or this elder isn't getting along so well with that elder, or that pioneer sister isn't getting along so well with this other sister. See, wherever that friction exists there, we should not just quickly say, well, it's the other person that makes the problem. Nobody can get along with them. No, according to this, what we really need to ask ourselves is, have I grown up into the love of Christ? Because if I have grown up into the love that Christ had, the scripture says, I will be harmoniously joined to all the others. So you see, the harmony of our Christian brotherhood depends upon what extent we're able to copy the love of Christ. See, that's why that question, brothers, we discussed earlier was so important. Who are these that come flying just like doves? See, it's one thing to come here, but it's another thing to take on the qualities and get along with everybody else here, showing the love that they are due and working along with them in peace and harmony. And the only ones who will be able to do it are those who recognize where Christ is today. The head of the congregation, active, teaching all, directing and guiding. So when we think of Christ, we're not thinking about merely someone who died 1900 years ago. We are not merely thinking of someone who will rule 1,000 years in the future. We've got to think of someone who right now is directing and guiding and counseling all in the congregation so that we all are able to grow up into his love. So truly then, the basis for our brotherhood, besides being the fatherhood of God, involves recognizing Christ's role now and imitating the love in the example he set so that we harmonize with all others. Well, now obviously then, this means developing to a greater extent the qualities that show we truly are brothers and sisters. Now we sort of previewed some things. We'd like to get into a little more detail on the qualities needed to really show that we are truly a brother or a sister in God's arrangement, thus imitating as many aspects of Christ's love as we possibly can. For example now, in Mark chapter 10, Jesus mentioned something that is very important for us to have if we are truly to be a brother or a sister. This was his example, not a matter of him saying for us to do this, and then it was something that he didn't do. Now let's see what this is as we take now in detail some of the qualities needed to give evidence that we have this spirit of brotherhood. Now, Mark chapter 10, I'd like to read verses 43 and 44. Now, Jesus says there, "This is not the way among you. For whoever wants to become great among you must be your minister. And whoever wants to be first among you must be the slave of some." Alright, now I always do that just to see if any has fallen asleep on me there. Sometimes I can slip that in on some if they're not careful. So somebody's got to straighten out that 44th verse there. Alright, look how many I didn't catch. Let me see. I always like to. Yeah, I didn't get many at all. Alright, go ahead, sister. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Yeah, see, there's a little difference, isn't it? See, Jesus says that now whoever wants to be great in the brotherhood, and we all want to be great as a brother or sister, he says, you must become the slave, not of some in the congregation, but all in the congregation. Now that doesn't, brothers, exempt any of us. So you got to view yourself like this. Let's take everybody in the congregation except you and elevate them up here in a position we'll call superior. And then we'll take you and put you down under them in a position we call inferior and the slave, which means you must go to work serving and slaving for all the others. Now, we put everyone there. We put elders there. We put ministerial servants there. We put pioneers there. We put old people there. We put young people there. Because really, the genuine spirit of brotherhood means we're the slave of all. Now, slave, note, doesn't just sit down all day letting others do things. See, the slave has work to go about doing, serving. That's why that word in verse 43 is important. See where he says, but whoever wants to become great among you must be your minister. See, that's what a slave does. A slave will minister to others. Not some, as you brought out, but all. Now, someone might know Greek, at least a working knowledge of it, and they might see that word minister in verse 43 and be able to tell us the Greek word for minister. And usually we can get someone that is able to do that, and then that will help us to get a better understanding of what it means to be the slave that ministers. Anyone able to help us with that? That Greek word that we translate minister in English there? Who's got the Greek word? All right, thank you, brother. Yes, and I'm going to use the form diakoneo. See, and put it there in the regular form. And that verb literally means in English to serve. But now here's the important point that was made to us about the Greek word diakoneo. That it didn't just mean any kind of service, but it meant you would be able to render very personal services. Now, for example, brothers, very personal services you will only let someone close to you render. Well, someone close like a brother or a sister. So the idea here in saying the slave ministers to all means that in this Christian spirit of brotherhood, we would learn our brothers and sisters so well that we would be able to serve them not just in a general sense, but in a very personal sense. Now, let's let Jesus illustrate this further in Luke 17, because he gave here a particular illustration that used correctly this Greek word diakoneo, that means to render personal services. And this will help us sort of get the point much clearer here. Luke 17. Now, we'll read two verses there, 7 and 8. Luke 17, 7 and 8. Now, here's his illustration. Jesus says, who of you is there that has a slave plowing or minding the flock, who will say to him when he gets in from the field, come here at once and recline at the table? Rather, will he not say to him, get something ready for me to have my evening meal, and put on an apron and minister to me until I am through eating and drinking, and afterward you can eat and drink. Now let's follow the movements of that slave. Make sure now we get the sense of this. All day long, where was the slave, according to Jesus' illustration? All day long, where was the slave? What was he doing? All day long, where was the slave? Sister Moore.
He was plowing and minding the flock.
All right, that was his job, wasn't it? That was his assignment there. But in verse 7, when Jesus described that, would you note, please, he did not use the word diakoneo, or minister. In fact, when did Jesus first use the word minister to describe what the slave was doing? All right, you picked that up? Yes, sister. At mealtime. Now, isn't that interesting? While the slave was out in the field working all day, and naturally it was a service, the word minister or diakonia was not used for obvious reasons. Though it was work, it was not a personal service being rendered. Whereas, when the slave came in from the field, and the master sat down at the table, and the slave cooked the food, put the plate in front of the master, put the food on the plate, saw to it that the master ate, washed up the dishes and all of that, then he started to minister to his master in a personal sense. See the difference? Now, think of where we are now, brothers, in the Christian brotherhood. See, you might do some work for the brothers and sisters. You might contribute to the work needed in the congregation quite a bit. But now, are you merely working in a general sense, or have you come to know each one so well that you can, when needed, render personal services? See, that's the spirit of brotherhood, not just general work. Now, let me illustrate this because I saw this, and Sister told me this. When I made a visit on her, one of our sisters that can't get out, that's in the house, health problems that primarily seem to be arthritic. So we made a visit by and talked to her, and so it came to my mind, well, she doesn't get out much. I'm going to see if maybe she'll respond and come out to the meeting Sunday. So I invited her. Said, do you think you'd be able to come? She said, well, yes, I could come if I could get some help. She said, in fact, I could come every Sunday, but the problem I have, there's no one that is willing to help me. So I did not say what is the problem, but right after that she volunteered and told me. She said, being arthritic, early in the morning when I get up, I cannot move my arms or legs enough even to get into my clothes. She said, so in order for me to get ready to be out at a 10 o'clock meeting, I have to have a sister to come by and help me move my limbs and get limbered up and into my clothes. And then she said, I could come out every Sunday if I had someone to do that. So I said, well, did the sisters stop by here to see you? She said, oh yes, they stop every now and then. But no one is willing to do that. Now, brothers, there's an example of what we're talking about here. See, she needs a very personal service performed. Even a service that will attend to the needs of her body. But though the sisters around her are willing to do some things, apparently no one is willing to reach out to do that. Now here's why we all need to think about that, no matter who you are in the congregation, young or old person, appointed servant or not. We have to think about this when it comes to our brothers and sisters. Are we merely willing to render spiritual services for others? Or are we willing to do whatever is necessary to aid them as one of our brothers and sisters? See, we do know this, that there are people that will do any spiritual service you need. Go out of their way to render you any spiritual help. But are they equally as willing always to render a personal service? To render something that involves manual labor or service? Or as one brother put it, when he found it not to be the case in a congregation he moved in, and after seeing how the brothers were, he said, well, the only problem here is nobody in this congregation is willing to get their hands dirty for it. He said, the congregation I came from, we all pitched in together and did what we can whenever there was a need for one another. He says, but here, when it comes to personal things, manual labors, he said, nobody will get his hands dirty for it. Well, that's hard to imagine someone as the slave of all that wouldn't be willing, if necessary, to do what they could, even if it involved manual labor, using the hands, and even getting them dirty. See, brothers, that's why we said, yes, it's one thing to say, I have made the flight from this old system to God's organization, and that around me there are many brothers. Yes. But have we taken on the qualities that show we're in God's house, and that all you are brothers, and that we truly are domesticated, and one spirit that is involved in being a brother or sister is willingness to serve, even rendering very personal services for our brothers and sisters. Now, it's not all negative. I saw something recently, just last month, that touched my heart, moved me a lot, because I saw to what extent brothers and sisters will go to help one another. How self-sacrificing some of our brothers and sisters are. Because this was one of our sisters shut in completely now, not able to get out, living alone over in Manhattan, and she has no one with her at night when she really needs to have someone. And you know how it is even with getting the homemaker or housekeeper. It's usually 6 or 8 hours during the day. They're gone. You can't get anybody. If you really got to have someone generally at night, it's difficult. And that's the problem she had. But she had a loving sister just a few floors above her. Sister had her own family, husband, children, and all. But after she got all them settled each night around 11:30, she came down to the shut-in sister's house. And that's where she spends the whole night till 6 in the morning. And then she gets up and gets the shut-in sister ready, and then goes to her own house and get her children and husband settled on the way. Every night, all during the week, because her sister's got to have someone with her. That's putting yourself out. So I wasn't surprised. When I was in the territory and saw the same sister that had the shut-in sister in a wheelchair, 10 blocks from her home, rolling her around to a little shopping district to get her a little fresh air and help her get the few little things that she wants. I wasn't surprised because I saw then what she's made out of. She is really a sister. See, it wasn't just calling someone sister as a title, but that was someone who was that close and that willing to render personal service. Well, now, what we have to think about here when we look at all of these around us, and in all honesty, ask, who am I serving? Who am I helping? Who I put myself out for? Now, the Bible in Acts chapter 9 gives us a very good example of a sister very loved, very dear, and we'll be able to see how she projected herself into the mainstream of the congregation and won the affections of all. Acts chapter 9, verse 36. He's introduced to us there with some good comments. It says, "But in Joppa there was a certain disciple named Tabitha, which when translated means Dorcas. She abounded in good deeds and gifts of mercy that she was rendering." Oh, now there was a sister, Dorcas. Let's see what she was doing. Go to verse 39. "At that Peter rose and went with them. And when he arrived, they led him up into the upper chamber. And all the widows presented themselves to him, weeping, and exhibiting many inner garments and outer garments that Dorcas used to make while she was with them." Well, now we can see some of her good deeds and gifts of mercy there. What did that sister Dorcas do to help out in her congregation? There. Yes, to go there.
You would make in and out of garments.
Alright, she made likely she could do some sewing things. Now, of course, many people sew, and what we have to look at here is how we know she had an eye to help people who really needed help. Can you pick that out of the verse? How do you know she wasn't just doing things for her? You know, some people do anything. Their real close friend, that one who's just like that with them. You know, the one in the world, they say is your bosom buddy. You know, your ace, they say. So you do anything for them. But how do you know she had an eye to help people who really needed help? All right, Brother Jackson, Jerry Jackson.
Imagine she helped the widows.
Yeah. Those poor sisters without husbands, see, they likely needed a little help. And so she did what she could to help them. We know why they were crying here. Because she was dead. That's why they came to Peter crying and said, look, Dorcas was here. This is what she did. We loved her. We couldn't have these things unless she helped out. How do you know that she really knew her sisters well? We can find a lot in the verse if we look for it. Don't leave it too quickly. How do you know she was well acquainted with the sisters there? Not just on a casual acquaintanceship with the man. Yes, sister, thank you. Yeah, so you got to know quite a bit to sew for a sister, don't you? You got to know what her size is, what colors she likes, what colors she does not like, how she likes it to fit on her, inner garments, outer garments. You got to know somebody pretty well to do all that for. So see, she is close to them. She was a sister. And it was from her heart because here was people that couldn't pay her back. But yet she is moved to help them. No wonder they were in tears when the Apostle Peter was there crying because Dorcas had died. But think how happy they was when Peter went in there and resurrected Dorcas. That's what he did on this occasion and put her right back in the congregation. You can imagine the joy and happiness they all had because a real sister was brought back into the congregation. So truly here we get examples here, very personal things, very personal services, being willing to serve, being willing to do whatever is possible that is involved in having the spirit of brotherhood. Something else needed in the way of quality is mentioned here in Romans 12. Let's see what that is. And verse number 13. We can have someone read that right from the audience. If you've got a nice strong voice and like to read it, we'll give you a chance. Let's see if everybody's getting a chance. All right, this young brother, you didn't have a chance. Read that now. Romans chapter 12, verse 13.
Here with the Holy Ones, according to their needs, follow the course of hospitality.
Yeah. So there it is, hospitality. That's needed. Now, why do you think it said there, brothers, follow the course of hospitality? What does that tell us in showing that hospitality must be a course? Sister Moore?
Regular habit.
Good. Brother Moore?
Follow the one that sets the perfect example.
Alright. You know, the golf course is one hole after another. You go one to the other, follow right along. In other words, the pattern that you're set into, there's a prescribed way laid out. You don't hit one or two times and leave. There is a course that is to be followed. Well, hospitality is the same. It means this. By definition, hospitality, giving or liking to give a welcome, food and shelter, and kind treatment to friends or strangers. We give that again. It's sort of an in-depth definition. Giving or liking to give a welcome, food and shelter, and kind treatment to friends or strangers. So a person following the course of hospitality then is really a brother or sister who likes to give a welcome. He likes to treat kindly others. He likes to provide shelter for them if needed in his home. He likes to make food available to them and share that because he or she is hospitable. Well, now, of course, in the Kingdom Hall, all should be hospitable and all should like to give welcomes or greetings. Well, now, that's not too difficult when it is your congregation and when you're surrounded by those that are known to you very well. But where sometimes the problem comes in is when someone not known too well to you, that is your family as a congregation, comes in, and then they will have to be welcome. See, that's where it comes in, liking to give a welcome to strangers. Sometimes it is observed in a Kingdom Hall that a stranger comes in, either a visiting brother unknown to you, or a person of interest that is just starting to come. And instead of many breaking away from their normal associates and intimate friends to welcome this one, sometimes that one is ignored. Well, now, if that is the case, when that person leaves your congregation, what is he going to think? His obvious conclusion is, I don't think they were really brothers and sisters. Now, he'll say that no matter how much you might love each other, no matter how much you might talk to each other and visit with each other and welcome each other, if, as a stranger, he was not included in the mainstream of your affections, then when he leaves, he talks about you and he says, when I went there, it was cold in the congregation because no one included him in the warmth. See, that's why, brothers, when we come into the Kingdom Hall weekly, we need to take a look around to see if someone is visiting us, that we need to follow the course of hospitality and make sure we give them a welcome. Now, this hospitality should also extend to the home, because there you have occasion, as it's said, to offer shelter or kind treatment or food. Do you entertain in your home? And do you make the effort to have different ones there? Well, almost everybody invites those real close at home. But now, do you invite those that are not so close at times to your home? Now, just to illustrate the possibility, I'll tell you what I found out about one sister. And she told me this. She said, in our congregation, and it was bigger than yours is now since you divided. They had about 125 at the time she mentioned it. But she said, in our congregation, I have had every brother and sister over to my house for a meal at one time or another except 3. She said, I know who they are. All but 3. And the reason they haven't been over is because they came into our congregation rather recently. And I hadn't got around to them as yet. But next week, I have a little dinner, and I'm going to have those 3 and some others over. She said, then I'll be 100% again. She said, I've been 100% many times, but it's just they come in so fast, and we read that like a cloud to God's organization. And she said, I can't keep up or stay at 100%. She said, but I make it my business to take note to have different ones from time to time. Now, when I tell that, I know right away what some start to think. Oh, probably some very affluent sister got a lot to splurge and impress people, so she has a lot of fancy dinner parties. So I usually give a little more of her background and let you know her husband's not in the truth, and she has 10 children. So you know about what her situation is. But the point is, she just reaches out to include others. And her concern is, well, here's a fine time to associate with my brothers and sisters. Now, Jesus found fine people like that in the first century, and you read in the Bible, you find one home that Jesus was at so many times, and he is always welcome there. It was just about 2 miles out of Jerusalem there. Anybody remember whose home that was? Always there. He could go there anytime he wanted. He is always welcome. About 2 miles out of Jerusalem was where they lived. Whose home was that? To show you that there's a home famous down to today. Yes, sister. Yes, Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. And Jesus loved all of them so much. Why? Because they were hospitable. He loved Mary, he loved Martha, he loved Lazarus. He cried when Lazarus died. They were that close. But that was because their relationship extended beyond the formalities of Kingdom Hall and service and into the home. And hospitality even shown there. Yes, what a fine way to grow closer to our brothers and sisters, little by little, getting to know them. Now, some might wonder, what are you getting at? Well, in trying to help us see what Jehovah's goal is. You see, brothers, we said that we want to have the same goal that God has as respects His earth. And Jehovah's goal is quite clear. That is to have one day on this earth, just one family, as the human family. And every one of them related to each other as a brother or sister, and every one known to all the others. Now think of what that would mean one day for you. It would mean you on an earth with maybe 20 to 30 billion people or more, and you know every one of them. And every one of them a brother or a sister. Now, I don't mean just know they exist. See, there are a lot of people you know exist. You see them in the building where you live. But maybe you don't know their name or their characteristics or their ways or anything about them. So you really do not know them. But according to the point made in our little green book, Is This Life All There Is, on 149 and 150, here's what it said we'd have the opportunity to do when gaining everlasting life. It says, everlasting life was set before us, endless opportunities to express love and to benefit from the love of others. It would give us the needed time to get to know fellow humans, to come to appreciate their fine qualities, and to cultivate intense love for them. Earth's inhabitants are indeed varied in personality, styles of dress, preferences in food and architecture, in music and other arts. The time it would take to get to know and appreciate billions of humans and to learn from their experience and talents staggers the imagination. But would it not be a pleasure to know the entire human family and be able to accept each member thereof as a very dear friend? That's what everlasting life is about. The everlasting life is about knowing the people that God brings to His family. Can you see yourself working realistically toward that goal of knowing the entire human family and recognizing them all as brothers and sisters? Well, brothers, if we're working toward that goal of knowing billions one day, then we're certainly taking the time to learn 100, 150, or 200 that are around us every week, 2 or 3 times. You see, if we haven't taken the time to learn these few hundred and learn all these names, learn all these personalities, learn all these characteristics, ways, and preferences, how are we going to say we're going to learn the whole human race? And sometimes people have had years and years to learn just these few. And no, if we're truly working with that spirit of brotherhood, we're now reaching out to know and include all that God brings here. And as we stated earlier, everybody is here because God has brought him here. This is God's family, according to purpose. Who are these that come flying just like doves to their bird households? The great crowd of God's people today. And there they make these wonderful transformations, becoming domesticated, taking on the qualities of true brothers and sisters. And already God's family numbers nearly 2.5 million around the earth. And when He later in that new order starts to resurrect the millions that are now dead, that family will rapidly grow to billions. But all of them will be transformed and take on the qualities that will bring honor and glory to God. And it is our privilege to say, these are our myriad of brothers and sisters, all serving God, all in His house, all giving evidence that glory and honor belongs to God. So brothers, we want to do all we can to continue to build in ourselves this spirit of brotherhood, manifesting the qualities, and doing all we can to draw closer and closer to those that God brings here as our brothers and sisters. Continue cultivating the spirit of brotherhood. Now we'll have an opportunity this weekend to be with our brothers and sisters in assembly. And our assembly is one we feel you will benefit from quite a bit. We know you'll be present. use the opportunity to become better acquainted with some of your brothers and sisters from other places. Don't be like one congregation. One of the sisters told me about it. You get a lot of information from the sisters. He said, yeah, our congregation, they just want to stick with each other. They got their cliques here and there. He said, now you watch when they come to the assembly. I'm going to show you at a look, and you'll see all them sitting there together. They're not going to try to meet anybody else from another congregation. She said, you watch. I said, oh, I know you're just kidding. So we got to the assembly Saturday. She said, come here, let me show you something. She said, look up over there. Now, they all were. Just like in the car, sitting there with each other, talking to the same ones they see every week, and not even taking the time to get to meet anybody else because of not getting. Don't be like them. So whenever you get a chance to meet a new brother or sister and include them into your friendship and acquaintanceship, reach out and include them. And that reward then is yours. You are richer for it. You know one more member of God's family because eventually you're going to have to know them all. That's God's arrangement. Nobody is going to live on this earth forever with somebody that they do not know. Jesus said, all you are brothers. And that's the way it will work. So use assemblies, circuit, and district to keep little by little reaching out for others. Let's close now our meeting this evening.